Welcome, everybody, to the Gimmick Infringement Podcast. I am Brad Winchester, and with me, as always, are my tag team partners, Tyler McDowell Blanken and Mike Steph. We're here for Ep 3 of our Three Wisemen series, and I'm excited. We are about to talk about the WWF WWE incarnation of Paul Heyman. No more Paul E. dangerously for us. It's Paul Heyman time. Tyler, how are you?
I'm so excited. This is it. This is the finale. It's the moment we've been waiting for. Hopefully you've been waiting for. If you haven't already, we encourage you to check out episodes 1 and 2. Episode 1, we discuss, Mike's got it. That's right, Mike. It's a vibe. Episode 1, we discuss Paul Heyman in AWA and WCW. For episode 2, we discussed Paul Heyman in ECW. That was a really fun one. So hopefully by now you know the format. Each of us are bringing a question to the table so that we can have a really spirited, fun conversation. So that being said, Mike, you've kicked us off each of the past 2 episodes. You're our guest of honor. You are host of the acclaimed Salty Thoughts of Mike Steph podcast, as well as Hidden Gems Football, which is a part of the
19 Media Group.
That's right. Let's go. Mike, we're really excited you're here, man. We're super grateful for you. And I believe we're ready for your first question. Like Brad said, we're talking Paul Heyman in WWF and WWE. Let's get it.
Okay. Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Paul Heyman. And I have a cachet of people that you could call Paul Heyman guys. So that leads me into my first question. I'm going to list off a couple of names, and you tell me which ones don't belong. Lesnar, Big Show, Angle, Punk, CM Punk, that is, Roman Reigns. That's one half. The other half, Ryback, Curtis Axel / Joe Henning.
Oh, man.
Cesaro / Claudio Castagnoli. Who, if anybody, was at fault for not getting over? Who should get credit for those who did get over? All of these names that I just came out my spout are Paul Heyman guys.
Wow. I'm playing back these memories in my mind, Mike, of these talents, especially the latter group that you mentioned, the group that maybe wasn't as successful as Paul Heyman guys in WWF / WWE. I think they were WWE by the time those guys appeared that you mentioned, the Rybacks and Axels and Cesaros of the world. So who deserves credit? For that first group, the Big Shows, the CM Punk, certainly the Roman Reigns. I mean, in terms of credit, man, I think a healthy amount has to go to Paul there because he was essential in getting those characters over. Of course, you got to give credit to the performers themselves. If I'm understanding your question correctly, which is a really good one, for that second group of people, Mike, you're asking who deserves the credit for it not going well? That's tough, man. I don't know that I'm ready to put it on Paul. I'm thinking about Ryback. I'm thinking about Curtis Axel. And I don't know that the character was fleshed out enough. So maybe some of that's attributed to Paul and, maybe his genius, his talents didn't quite rub off on those guys. Ryback was a whole moment, man. We really thought maybe this guy is next up. Yeah, I remember the Feed Me More era. That's right. If you're on YouTube, you see Mike doing the Feed Me More. It looked like Ryback was slated to be that next powerhouse, and it didn't work out. Curtis Axel, I don't think ever really stuck the landing. I don't want to be that guy, Mike, but I think for both of your questions, it's a combination, and I think Paul Heyman probably deserves credit. Definitely deserves credit for when it did go well, but for the talents where it didn't go well, yeah, I think I'm leaning toward putting him in maybe there was more he could have done, or maybe we could have went the extra mile for some dudes who needed that extra character help, such as the Axels and some of those other dudes you mentioned. How about you, Brad? What do you think? It's a good question.
Yeah, it's a great question. I think that first group of people are in a totally different stratosphere. Big Show didn't need any help. Like That dude was over before he got to the WWE.
So true.
It's hard. It's hard to. Well, I shouldn't say it's hard to do this because they've managed to do this quite a bit. But it's really hard to f up somebody that big. And then I think about Omos, and then I think about like what's the Giant Gonzalez who had a run and then disappeared, and then there's examples of huge people just not working out. Um, I don't know that I don't really know that Paul did anything for Big Show like that. To me, it's always kind of been the same thing for him. Where Punk and other members of the Nexus obviously brought up Curtis Axel for that one in particular. I think that I've always had questions about it because why his grandfather was the Axe, which I'm guessing is where he took Axel from. Had he gone in as the son of Mr. Perfect, and we talk about this a lot with oh, why can't I think of his name because it's stupid Braun Breaker, dumbass name. Like if he would have gone in there um playing off of his parent and his uncle instead of coming in with a different name, would he be on the main roster already? If he was a Steiner, I don't really know. Where Curtis Axel, I associate him with Kurt Hennig, Mr. Perfect. So I don't know who's to blame there because he's no Kurt Hennig, but and nobody ever will be in my opinion, but he was just missing something. And I don't know that Paul can do everything. I also don't know because correct me if I'm wrong, because this is an era that I flipped through pretty quickly. He was a SmackDown guy, right? Some of these guys were SmackDown guys. Well, Paul was booking SmackDown at a time where they were beating Raw, and they made them change it and I think Paul got fired or removed from that position because they were beating Raw, and they were supposed to be the B show, and Paul was doing such a good job booking that show that I think it ended up being a thing where it was like, hey, let's not put too much stock into these characters and boosting them up. So I wonder how much behind the scenes stuff was like, no, Paul had the idea, but then it was, no, we're not going to do that with that character. How much freedom he actually had to do with that. So it's almost impossible to put blame on why that stuff didn't work. But I have to believe if Paul had carte blanche to do with those guys what he wanted to again coming back to highlighting their strengths and hiding their weaknesses, that all of these guys would have worked out, or maybe it just wasn't meant to be in the WWE WWF system. So I don't know how to blame people for that one, but if Paul had all the control, then I'm going to have to say that it was probably talent. I trust Paul that much.
I think our special guest might be muted.
Yeah.
Yeah, the Claudio / Cesaro one, that's the one that scratched I scratched my head because it was like a mismatch. It was almost like Paul was a heel, but Cesaro was a face, and then they pretty much made Cesaro into a heel, but it was going against the crowd reaction. So that one just never flashed. Plus, that was right around the time that Lesnar ended the Undertaker streak. So there was always a pushback against Paul being associated with Cesaro. Like it didn't mesh. But good idea, just didn't mesh.
Yeah, great combo, guys. So I have the next question, and I have some exposition that I'm going to get to it. On August 28th, 2020, Paul Heyman appeared with Roman Reigns on SmackDown. This was the week following SummerSlam, in which Reigns made his huge return to WWE. He attacked The Fiend and Braun Strowman, which was the main event of that particular SummerSlam. So it became official in August 2020, definitely cemented in September 2020. Reigns became a Heyman guy. Two-part question for you. I'm going to try to sneak in a second part here. First, how important has Heyman been to establishing this version, the head of the table, our tribal chief, Roman Reigns? And if we can think about a time, maybe in the near future, in which the bloodline story, the head of the table, is no more, which talent would you strap Paul Heyman to post Roman Reigns?
Okay. First things first, he was very integral in the formation of what we see now in Roman Reigns. Because when you have Paul Heyman by your side, it's almost like a signal to the audience that you are controlling the narrative that they see on the TV. It's not like, okay, the company is
Flashback.
getting behind you. It's the fact of, okay, it's a Roman Reigns, Paul Heyman production. This is what they're coming up, and they're getting the okay, they're getting the leeway into bringing that to the forefront. I think that gave also. I'll say this without trying not to get too long winded. That debuting in the time of COVID, in the time of the Thunderdome, where you can have a chance to cultivate a character without really having to deal with whatever feedback you're getting from the live crowd, allowed them to, you know, really work the character. So by the time it got in front of the live crowd, it was a perfected act. You know, so I think this character would not be what it is without Paul Heyman, because Paul Heyman is allowed that leeway. You know, whoever works with Paul Heyman is allowed that leeway. Now, for the other question of who would I attach Paul to after the fact, that's a good question. Knowing the history of Paul never wants to go with the status quo, never wants to go with something current. He's always looking toward the future. So I think we just spoke about it. I would, when Braun Breaker comes on to the main roster, I'm attaching it to him. They got history, Paul always, it seemed like whoever he attached himself to is always almost like a family connection based on like Roman. He went back, he used to manage not the Wild the Samoa SWAT team. There was always a connection.
Yep.
Now I don't think he actually managed the Stylers, but he was in that same era, so he can say, "Yeah, I remember your father.
Yeah, he worked
I
at
remember
WCW.
your uncle."
Yeah.
You know, so yeah, that's like a no brainer. Like, so it would be Braun Breaker for me.
I completely agree with you. It's Braun Breaker. Two things. Control your narrative gave me some flashbacks. Number one. Number two, as soon as you mentioned Thunderdome, my head was filled with "Are you ready?" Oh, that song. Just 3 years of that crap. Just so much. And I shouldn't say crap. I love me some AC/DC. So I can't stress enough how important Paul Heyman being attached to Roman Reigns, to take this guy that's been pushed as a babyface forever to instantly have credibility as a heel, to have Paul be the wise man and going like, I know your family and all these things. I thought that was perfect. And yeah, I would love to see him with Braun Breaker. Tyler, how about you?
Yeah, that's the answer. I know there was also some talk amongst the community about maybe Ronda Rousey would be the next Paul Heyman talent,
Yeah.
but
Not anymore.
you know, she's got to be in the company to do that.
Yeah.
I agree with you guys. I mean, it's clear. It's Braun. I definitely believe. I sure hope that he moves to Monday or Friday nights in the new year. I think he's had a great run in NXT, and it's time to move on. He is the answer. He's shown a lot of promise, and I think much like Paul's done with Roman, I think Braun being attached to Paul could really move him to that next stratosphere, that upper echelon, that, dare I say, main event, perpetual main event talent. I don't know when we're going to get another Roman Reigns. I mean, Roman Reigns is the guy, but Braun is next up, and to me, he's the clear and he's the best choice.
All right, guys. Brock's advocate, Punk's advocate, Roman's advocate. These are all heel personas. Is there a situation where we get to see Paul be a babyface manager in the WWE that don't involve the letters E, C, and W?
No chance. No. And I'm completely okay with that. I like my Paul Heyman being heel. I like booing him. There's no chance. I think he remains heel, especially if our fantasy booking comes true and he's with Braun. I don't need to see babyface Braun. We got that at the genesis of NXT 2.0. It was fun for a little bit, but to me, Braun, Mike's not as convinced. To me, Braun Breaker is better as a heel, and Paul Heyman certainly is as well.
No, there's to borrow Vince McMahon phrase, there's no chance in hell I will ever want him as a face figure. You know, the closest thing we had, anytime he's kind of lean face, he always turns.
Yes, it's always a swerve.
You know, so when Punk came back at that brief hiatus after WrestleMania, the WrestleMania he lost against the Taker. You know, I don't remember the number, but when he came back and pretty much he was kind of like, you know, he was straddling the fence. He turned on Punk. When he was with Lesnar and Lesnar had a brief face turn. I mean, yeah, brief face run. It never hit the same. And then he ended up turning on Lesnar, or he ended just vamoosing. And now even with Roman, the closest thing they ever came to being a face, and they really wasn't, but the popularity aspect was last year, right after Survivor Series, when everybody and their mother was on the Sami Zayn train. You know, it was like they was getting pops and yeah, the bloodlines in your city and all that. You know, they was like pretty much they were the faces if you think about it, you know, even though they was on the opposite spectrum. So even with that, guess what? When that faction started becoming a little bit too popular based on the popularity of Sami Zayn, they brutalized Sami Zayn. Well, they brutalized Kevin Owens and caused Sami Zayn to get up out of there.
Mm-hmm.
They turned heel. Heyman is meant to be a heel. He's meant to be respected, but he's meant to be hated, and that hate transforms itself into respect. So yeah, heel.
Yeah, to your point, Mike, we can still have you kicked us off this way, right? Ladies and gentlemen, my name, right? Like we can still
he could be over.
Yeah, I would say he could be over.
Everybody loved MJF and booed him.
Exactly. So as long as you give us the ladies and gentlemen so we can say it with you, okay, that's good. But then please continue being despicable because we like you best that way.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. I would love to see him do another ECW thing and get his flowers. But I think like outside of the ring, he's getting plenty of flowers. I think he's universally beloved as a bad guy. Like we hate him, but we love him because he's so good at letting us hate him. We all know it's a character that he plays, but it's one of those things. It's pro wrestling where it's that person turned up to 11. So you never really know how much of that is him and how much of it is a character. Or if it's like a Ric Flair situation, there's just no distinction between those two things anymore. So, and I'm not comparing him to Ric Flair. Please don't misunderstand me. Paul, for all intents and purposes, seems like he's probably a pretty good dude. And he's not wooing wings or anything. So I'm loving heel Paul. I hope we get to see Paul be a heel for the rest of his career in WWE. But I also hope that we get to see him actually get to go into the Hall of Fame, give his speech, get his flowers for ECW, get that chant one last time. I would like to see all of that, but I don't think there's any chance that he could be a babyface.
Yeah, for sure. Well, Mike, in case you are new to our listeners and viewers, which would be hard to believe if you've been rocking with GI for any amount of time.
Especially this last week.
Especially this last week. Yes, we had Mike on for our very special 5 biggest wrestling stories of 2023 episode. We talked Graps. We talked Draymond Green and the Warriors. We talked a little bit of Nicki Minaj, Pink Friday 2. But a quick plug, Mike, in case we haven't heard, in case we're not familiar, where can we find and support your work?
You can find me on the 19 Media Group YouTube page and all streaming platforms wherever streaming is available, wherever podcasts are available. On Hidden Gems Football that drops each and every Thursday with me and my partner, actually co-founder of the 19 Media Group, the Mojo King.
The mighty 19 Media Group.
Yes, the mighty 19
yeah.
Media Group, the Mojo King. Talk about and preview NFL action. We get y'all ready for your survival pools, point spreads, over-unders, and just try to get some coin in your pocket, but also at the end of the day, just trying to talk some football and have some fun. I have my own podcast, available on the YouTube page of Mike Steph, and also on all streaming platforms wherever podcasts are available. The Salty Thoughts of Mike Steph. They usually drops every late Sunday night, early Monday morning. And even though it's funny, I don't really promote this, but I probably should. I did drop a EP. I want to say my debut EP on Bandcamp.com. It's The Trials and Tribulations of Mike Steph EP. It's a 4-track EP. It really encapsulates my trials and tribulations, especially over this last year, my griefs, my sorrows, my triumphs, and it's a very, 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 very personal story of mine. And give it a spin. I'll be glad if you did. So yeah, that's pretty much it.
It was amazing. Not that you need a cosign, but we cosign you. Great EP, great work. You're one of our favorite people in the community, Mike. So thank you so much for being with us. Final plug, sportspodcastgroup.com. Please consider voting for GI. We've been nominated. Please consider voting for the Baseline NBA podcast. 19 Media Group is out here. For Brad, for Mike, we want to thank you for checking out our final installment of our Three Wisemen series. We've got big plans as we close out 2023 and head into 2024. Be on the lookout as we will return to your timeline and your inbox with some new content very, very soon. Gimmick Infringement is a part of 19 Media Group. You can listen to us on Apple, Spotify, iHeartRadio, or wherever you find podcasts. You can also find us on YouTube via the 19 Media Group channel. Please like, subscribe, comment, and share.